came dressed for the event for sure. So today we're going to learn a couple of techniques, but we're also going to talk about you hosting your own tie-dye party and what kind of things you might need to think about, because the logistics of having a tie-dye party can be something that people get tripped up on too. So one of the main things that we're going to do today is we are going to learn two techniques that you may already know or you may have never learned. And that's going to be to do some striping, like this kid's t-shirt that I did right here. And also we're going to learn how to do a spiral. So a spiral is going to end up looking kind of like a sunburst and something like that. And then a brand new technique to me, and maybe to you too, is going to be a little bit more advanced. So if you've already done those two, maybe you haven't done this before, but this one is going to be like a heart shape. So I'm going to show you a technique to be able to make kind of like a symmetric design in the center. And I did this one on a dark gray t-shirt, and I really like the way it turned out. So if you don't want super bright colors, if you're more of a darker colors kind of person, we're going to have tie-dye for everybody. So all the bright and happy tie-dye and some of the other tie-dye too, if you are into that. So I'm going to show you some tips and tricks as we go along, but the kit that I'm using today is a party kit. So it comes with stuff for basically 6 people. I've done parties before where I've hosted parties for kids, like at a school setting. And so with that, I recommend being outside, I recommend being on the grass, and I recommend having these little squirt bottles. Now, if you have adults and you have a little bit more control over where you're squirting the different dyes, then I recommend these really big bottles. So this can do a lot of things. It comes with how many? 2, 4, 6, 8 different colors, but it's a larger size bottle. If you are working with kids or a larger group, I recommend the smaller size bottles just because they're always going to want more of the bottles. They're not going to want to wait until the blue is ready or wait until the red is ready. So I think the little bottles are always a good idea with kids or with big groups. If you have a smaller group of adults, I think this big bottle kit is the way to go too. So a couple of other things when it comes to setting up for the party. A lot of these kits, including this one, come with a drop cloth. So you can use that drop cloth and go ahead and put it over a table or whatever surface you're trying to protect. It also comes with some rubber bands and of course some gloves. So usually the number of gloves that come in these kits is kind of giving you an indication of how many people they expect to be using the kit. So if you're trying to plan and decide how many of the kits to buy for different things, you want to kind of pay attention to how many gloves they include. If they only include 1 pair of gloves, that's meant to be for 1 person instead of a big party. So another thing you can think about doing, I've done it before, like for a field day with kids where we were already outside, kids were already in bathing suits. It was easy to just spray everything down with water when it was done. So that was an easy cleanup because everything can just kind of run off with the water. But if you're doing something inside of a school or inside of a building or inside of a nursing home, you might want to get some of these roasting pans. So you can do a technique where you can put a napkin or a paper towel in one of the roasting pans, and then when you're squirting the colors in, the napkin will do its job to collect a bunch, and the pan, of course, will do the rest. If you are doing a larger thing, you might want to do stations. So what we're going to do with our t-shirts today is we're going to get the t-shirts wet, the blank t-shirts. So you might have a station where you dunk t-shirts, and then you have a station that's kind of a flat area where we're going to wrap them using some of the different techniques and using some of the rubber bands. And then you have a third station that's different from all of those two. That's going to be where the color happens. So wherever the color happens, you want to keep that separate from the other 2 stations. And then usually what I do is after I finish making a t-shirt, I put it into a plastic bag. I leave it to sit outside in the sun for about, if I have a whole day, I let it sit out in the sun all day, but I would think at least 4 or 5 hours until the dye is able to be absorbed really well into the cotton. And then I'll show you how to rinse them out. So we're going to do the full process today. And there is not a lot of fun in tie-dye unless you get to see the final result. So I'm definitely going to open up some bags that I've already created and show you some of those too. So we are going to start with our 2 techniques of the stripes and the swirl pack. So I'm gonna go ahead and switch over to my other camera. And here's the striped t-shirt again. I did this on a small kid's shirt so that you can really see all the difference. And basically the technique behind this one is going to be to put your t-shirt into a long line. And then you can even see the colors that I did. So once I have my t-shirt into a long line, I put a rubber band, rubber band, rubber band, rubber band, and then I went through and did some different colors so that when you open it up, you have these nice stripes. And I like the stripes to kind of start almost like a rainbow in the bottom corner of my t-shirt. So I'm going to go ahead and do this with you on a blank shirt. So I have cotton tank tops that I'm going to be working with today. So I'm going to take this cotton tank top and I'm going to put it in my sink. So I'm working right next to my sink over here. And I'm just getting it damp. And I'm going to lay it on the surface. Now, if I was putting colors, I would protect this, but I'm not doing colors on this surface. On this surface, I'm just prepping, and I'm gonna do the colors on something else later. So here is my tank top, and I am going to be doing these stripes. So you can bunch it together, kind of accordion style, and you can do a whole bunch of rubber bands and you can do different colors. And you can imagine that when you open it up, you're going to have horizontal stripes. Similarly, you can bunch it like this and then put your rubber bands. And when you open it down, you're going to have some of those nice vertical stripes. But to get kind of like that rainbow sort of stripe I have from the bottom corner, I'm going to go to this bottom corner and I'm going to pull everything through my 2 fingers to kind of make a really long line. And then I'm going to go back to this really long line and I'm going to take the rubber bands that came with the kit and probably about every 1.5 or 2 inches, I'm going to put a rubber band. When I'm putting my rubber bands, I'm putting the rubber bands so that they all take up kind of that same space in the middle. I don't want them to be super wonky because where the rubber bands are is going to potentially leave some white space. And so you kind of have to decide, do you want a lot of white space or do you want the color to be saturated through the whole shirt? So see how my rubber bands right here are kind of spread out? So I might go back and kind of clump them closer together because I want the rubber bands to only cover up this space right here. So I'm going through and I'm putting these rubber bands all the way across, and you can make these stripes as wide or as thin as you'd like them to be. And you can do as few or as many colors as you want to also. So the kit that I'm working with today has 18 of those smaller squirt bottles in it. And it is a 1-step process. All you got to do is add water and shake it up, and the dye is ready to go. If you've ever done old school tie-dye is what I would call it, where I used to do it out in buckets in somebody's side yard during the summer. I don't know if anybody ever did it like that before, or if that's just my neighborhood. But you don't have to heat up the water. You don't have to boil the water. You don't need to make it super hot. With this particular kit that I'm working with today, you can just add any kind of water, hot or cold, into the squirt bottle, and it's going to do well with saturating it. So I am making all of these stripes, and I'm also kind of, when I scrunched it together to make this really long line, you can think about if you want to keep those scrunches together and put the dye over top so that when you open it, you have more of that white space. Or again, if you don't want a lot of white, when you are doing the color, you're going to want to go into all those different creases to try and make sure that you're not leaving any white spaces. So this dye, you don't have to heat up a pot of boiling water. You don't have to do anything special. You just have to take the powder that's already in the bottles, add water to the fill line, shake it up, and you're ready to party. So it makes it very easy for starting and of course for cleanup. Once you have the dyes in the bottle, I recommend using them all in that sitting. If you leave the dyes and try to come back to them in a couple of weeks, they're not going to be as concentrated anymore, and the color might not last as long or be as potent. I think this is kind of bothering me, so I'm going to put another one in here. And I'm going to start this striped one, and I'm going to start a swirl one, and then we're going to come back and we're going to color both of those. So I'm just doing my prep right now on this table. And like I was saying before, if you are having kind of like a party or a get together, I recommend having stations. One station where you dunk the clean or the white or gray or blank t-shirt just to get it a little bit damp. You can do it dry, but I usually recommend doing it damp. And then once you have that done, then you can go to another station that has a flat surface like the one I'm working on. And then you can just have a bunch of your rubber bands. Again, I love these little roasting pans. I think they're really helpful if you're having people and doing this together with a group of friends. So I have a roasting pan that has a bunch of rubber bands so that I don't lose them or they don't blow away, and I can kind of keep them handy. And then here, I just got this next t-shirt damp, and I'm going to be doing a spiral pattern on this one. So again, think about where you want the spiral. If you want the spiral to come from the middle, if you want the spiral to come from down at the bottom corner, wherever you want your spiral to begin, you're going to take your pincher fingers and you're going to pinch together. And then I'm just using kind of my fingernails and my thumb and my second finger to pinch and twist and pinch and twist and let all this kind of naturally do its job of swirling up there. And then if you need to give it a hand and kind of push it in the right direction, you can, but it usually does it for itself. And then I have this beautiful cake, the circle of my t-shirt. And at this point, you can decide how many different sections you want to break this into. So you're going to break it into sections using rubber bands. So I'm going to go ahead and go across to make 2 halves. And then from here, you can decide if you want 4, you can decide if you want 6, you can decide if you want 8. And you don't have to use that many different colors. You can always alternate colors. I'm going to break this into 6 parts. So I'm going to put a rubber band going across this way. And I'm going to put a rubber band going across this way. And I'm making sure to grab any of these pieces that are hanging out and kind of put them where I want them to be in these different sections. And so let me check and make sure that I can tell my distinct sections. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different sections. And I can kind of keep playing with the placement of these rubber bands in order to make the different sections the same size, or maybe you want one of the sections to be bigger than the others. So right now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different sections that you could use 3 colors, you could use 6 colors, you could use 2 colors, and you can really go ahead and make that. When you open it back up, you're going to end up with a really cool spiral. So the spiral, once you have these colors, you'll be able to see the different chunks of colors that come out into that spiral pattern. Okay, then the last one that we're going to prep before we start adding our color is going to be newer to me. And this is that heart technique I was showing you. And I did this one on a gray t-shirt. So you can do the same technique on a white t-shirt, but I really love how this turned out. I used a black or a navy blue and a teal over top of the gray. And I think it just really gave me a nice color that I like working with. So I'm going to take a gray t-shirt similar to the one I just used, and I'm going to go ahead and get this damp. And I'm going to show you how you can make one of those symmetric scarves or heart, or if you have a letter like M, like me, forgot to take off the tag. So these gill down t-shirts are awesome. They're at Michael's. And look for shirts that are 100% cotton or very close to 100% cotton. Cotton is always going to hold that dye better than some of the other materials. So keep that in mind if you're going to do a tote bag or a bandana or anything else like that. So when we're making this technique, I'm going to fold in half to get my line of symmetry. So I'm taking this t-shirt and I'm folding it in half. And then I'm going to take a marker. I'm going to use a Crayola marker. You can use a washable marker and you can allow this marker to kind of get wet and disappear. Or you can just use a regular marker if you don't mind the color being a part of your final design. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw half of the heart onto this t-shirt. And then I'm going to use that line to help me fold it up so that when I unfold it, I'm going to have this really beautiful, colorful design. So for half of the heart, here's the neckline of my t-shirt. I'm probably going to leave a couple of fingers. I'm not going to do it all the way up to my neck. I'm going to leave a couple of fingers worth, and I'm going to go ahead and kind of freehand this heart shape. So I literally drew a heart shape onto my damp t-shirt with a Crayola marker. If you have washable and you want that to wash away, you can, but I've done it before with just the regular Crayola markers and it works just fine, especially if I'm using that same color. Now here's the technique that I'm just now learning myself, and that is you're going to line up some folds. So you're going to kind of do that same bunching technique that I was doing before. So kind of think about it like a fan or like an accordion. And when you're bunching it up, you're going to keep following this line that you just put down with markers. And you're going to try and keep that line all the same. And you're bunching the t-shirt around to keep that line lined up. And that's how you're going to be able to get that heart shape, which I think ends up looking really, really cool. So I'm definitely going to put a rubber band right here to keep that heart shape nice and secure. And then if you want there to be an inside and an outside color of that heart, you can do another rubber band if you'd like. And then with the rest of the t-shirt, you can decide if you want to keep striping outwards, which is what I did on my example, or if you want to just kind of dip the whole rest of the color into a different, just pick a different background color different from the heart. You can do it that way too. So I'm going to take all of these folds that I still have and I'm going to kind of gather them closer together. And what you might have noticed in my shirt too was that I do have a lot of this gray that's showing through. So when I have all these folds, I didn't go in and get every single one of those folds colored so that I could still have some of that gray to give me kind of a third color on my shirt, which I think ended up looking really good. So I'm going to add a couple more rubber bands on here, and then we are ready to move on to our coloring station. So if you have any questions for me so far about how to throw a party with tie-dye or about any of the techniques that I've shown you so far, let us know in the chat and I'll try and answer those questions for you. I've also done tie-dye as a baby shower before. So I get a lot of tie-dye onesies, or I buy a lot of the white onesies of lots of different sizes. So a couple of 3 months, a couple of 6 months, a couple of 9 months, so that they have a whole collection for when the baby arrives. And then having all the friends over that are at the party kind of go through and make some different color choices. If you know the gender of the baby, you can make color choices on purpose, or you can just kind of go for it and give them a really nice selection of all the different colors. So this is my heart shirt. And I'm ready to color all of these. So if you are outside and you are doing this with a big group, you might have a table runner down that's like a big plastic table runner that comes with the kit. You might also use plastic bags, or you can even use garbage bags. I'm in my house and I have one of these throwaway roasting pans. And then I happen to have like a cookie rack. So I'm using a cookie rack and a roasting pan. And you can imagine that the cookie rack is going to kind of keep my surface up here and then let all the extra stuff drip. And then I can easily just pour this into the sink that's right to the side of me. And you can see how we can dispose that pretty quickly down the sink. It is safe to put down sinks and to put down septic systems. So the Tulip dye does a good job of making that safe to be able to dispose in that way. So here's my setup. And then I'm gonna have my spiral, and I think I'm actually gonna start with my stripe. So when you're doing your colors, you're definitely gonna wanna put on your gloves. So I'm gonna do that next. And then I'm gonna pick different colors and I'm just gonna go for it. So in this kit, let me also show you that in this kit, you have these bottles and they have a line at the back that says fill to this line. I actually recommend only filling it about halfway. There's some dye at the bottom in powder form. So if you fill it about halfway and then you're gonna shake it up, you need some space to be able to shake it so that the powder can dissolve, and then go ahead and fill it back up to the fill line. That's gonna give you a cleaner shake and hopefully nothing's going to make a big mess anywhere. So I am gonna go ahead and put on some of the gloves that they give me in the kit at this point. And I'm going to add some water to this yellow one. So I'm gonna add about halfway and I'll show you what that looks like. And I'm right next door at my sink. And I'm just adding water. If you're outside, if you're not by a sink, what I've done for that before is to use pitchers. So fill up a couple of pitchers so that you can have those nearby and have like some gallon buckets so that you can pull the water from the pitcher and then pour it into these little bottles if you don't already have these set up before the people who are coming to your party arrive. So now I'm shaking this and I'm trying to get all of that powder to dissolve. And I've only filled it up halfway so far so that the water can really get in there and do its job. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to add all the way up to the fill line so that I had some space to make that swish around a bit. And then I can add all the way up to the rest of the fill line, and then I'm ready to use this bottle. So I have several pre-made bottles, but I just wanted to show you this one from start to finish so you kind of get an idea of how to do it yourself. And then there are lots of colors. So you can again decide if you're throwing a party with lots of people, if you want everyone to have all the yellows, all the reds, all the blues in different stations, or if you want people and say, hey, pick 3 of the bottles and take it to your station, you can do something like that also. So another thing is that once you take off the cap, depending on the color, it can sometimes be hard to know what color you're using. So another suggestion is to write using a Sharpie marker, if it's orange, if it's pink, if it's purple, if it's blue or green, so that everybody can kind of tell, because unfortunately, a lot of times these tiny little caps get lost. So be careful with that. So here I am adding some yellow, and I am kind of going into the spaces and trying to get some of those spaces in between. And I'm going to purposely use some colors that I know that if they bleed into each other are still going to look really nice. So this is an orange that I already prepared and that I've already been using. So if I put this orange next to this yellow, I know that I'm going to end up with something nice. I can also maybe use some of my reds, some of my pinks, and kind of give it all that summer kind of color flavor or look to it. So here's a nice red, and all of these colors I'm showing you come in that pack that you can just buy that kit, and then you have all kinds of fun ready to go. Then I'm gonna add, I think I am gonna add a little bit of pink. I'm gonna add the pink here. And what's nice about this cookie rack is that it's keeping it high and letting all the extra dye drip down. If you don't have a cookie rack, I recommend that you put a paper towel in the bottom of your roasting pans so that a lot of the dye can go directly into the paper towel, and so that you don't get a lot of cross-contamination if you don't want the colors to mix too much. So now I'm going to go back with my yellow over here, and I'm going to try and mix it up and not kind of follow a very specific pattern. You can tell that I'm getting some splotches because on my gloves, I'm starting to collect some colors. But you know, that's kind of the fun of this whole thing. So I'm not too worried about a couple of extra splotches of pink or red or yellow. I'm going to kind of want all of these things to have fun together and do these. So this that I'm currently dyeing right now, I'm going to, when I'm finished, put it into a Ziploc bag and let it sit for several hours before I take it out and before I do the next part. So you're not going to be able to see me do this one live. But if you go to my personal Instagram, which is 4M Coleman, I will post all the reveal pictures of the ones that I'm currently making in class right now. And then because it's not fun to have a tie-dye party without some good tie-dye reveal, I do have some tie-dye reveals to show you at the end of this class too, that we're going to kind of take apart together and see what beautiful designs we have. So I didn't take a ton of time to open up all the spaces to get all the white. So I'm hoping that this one is going to leave some extra white spaces. Because I'm right next to my sink, I'm going to kind of wash down my hands a little bit. And then I'm going to take a gallon-sized Ziploc bag. And again, if you're working with a big group of kids or a big group of adults, I highly recommend putting their name in Sharpie on this bag, because once you put the bags on the ground or put them where they're going to be to dry, then everybody is going to not be sure anymore which one is theirs. So when I put this in the bag, I'm going to be careful so that the colors don't go up against each other. If I put this dark red right next to this yellow, I'm going to give myself an orange. It might happen, and that's okay if it happens. But if I'm going to try and keep those colors a little bit more separate, then I want to put it more carefully into the bag. And when I have it in the bag, I'm going to kind of leave it flat and go lay it somewhere outside in the sun. I don't have a lot of sun here in Dallas, Texas today. So just being outside, I think helps it. I like it to heat up a little bit. So if you can have a sunny day and you let these bags heat up, I think that does help with the dye process. But if you don't have sun and if you don't have heat, that's okay. I just put them on the floor right behind me in my kitchen for now in those bags. And I'm going to next take my spiral. So if you want to, you can rinse this down, or you can take a paper towel, because there is some red and yellow dye on my cookie wrap. So I can kind of take a paper towel and collect some of that if I'm going to change my color scheme. If you also have very particular people, you can change out gloves if you're going to change colors too, so that you don't accidentally get red fingerprints when you're using blues and purples and things like that. So on this spiral, I'm going to select some, let's say, I'm going to do a teal, and I'm going to do a yellow, and I'm going to do like this lime green kind of color. So I'm picking 3 colors because I have 6 sections. So I'm going to take the first color. I'm going to use my yellow, and I'm going to do this section right here, yellow. And you want to do this little pie piece, but you also want to flip it over and do the exact same pie piece on the other side. Again, decide how far you want to go into these creases. If you want this to be really, really colorful and really, really yellow, you really want to stick the bottle into all the different cracks and crevices that you can find. And then you might go with your blue or teal. Ooh, apparently my teal wants to go right here because it was already splashing over there. So I'm putting the teal into this little pie slice. I'm flipping it over and putting the teal into that same pie slice over here so that the front and the back are going to match up. And then I have another pie space in the middle, that I'm going to be doing with some green. So if you are making some tie-dye with me today, I would love to see what you're doing. You can use the hashtag LearnWithMichaels, or you can tag us on Instagram at LearnWithMichaels. And we would love to share on our Instagram page what you are working on and see some of your finished products. And again, the one I'm working on right now, after I let this sit outside for a couple hours and I rinse it down, I'll show you a reveal on my own personal Instagram, which is 4M Coleman, the number 4M Coleman. And I'm putting this teal, and I think this is going to turn out really, really good. Awesome. So with this, I'm taking another one of my Ziploc bags. Make sure that people put their names on them if you have lots of people playing and having a tie-dye party together. And I'm just
Meghan,
putting this.
sorry to
Sure.
interrupt. We have one question. I'll just read it out. Rowan says, you had mentioned it's best to use the colors in one setting. What's your advice for how to use and store colors if not being used in a party setting, but for occasional tie-dyeing every couple of weeks or once a month?
Great question. So the kits are all a little bit different. Do you mind going to my front-facing camera? The kits are all a little bit different, but you have some kits where if it has the powder in a bottle, a lot of times like this one I'm working with today has several of the same color. So there's like 2 yellows, 2 teals, 2 pinks, things like that. So obviously you can just use one at a time, and maybe a smaller bottle might be better for more of a personal use rather than a party situation. As soon as you add the water, that's when kind of the time starts ticking. And so you have about 72 hours to use it in the full use that they intended. You can still use it later. It just won't be as vibrant. It just won't be as dark. It might not take to the clothing as easily. So another option, if you know you're not going to use this whole entire bottle, is because it is powder. Sometimes these packs come with their own little packets of that powder to refill the same bottles. So you can keep reusing the same bottles over and over again and just keep adding the powder. So reversely, you can take some of this powder out and you can put it into a smaller bag for later. And so maybe you only fill it halfway, and then that's a good way to use just what you have and not to waste any extra dye. So that's a great question, and thanks for asking that. The next thing that we're going to do together is I have some examples of some that have already been sitting outside in the sun, and they are ready for reveals. So we're going to cut open these rubber bands, and after these have been sitting outside, I'm putting my gloves back on. There will be some excess dye that's on them. So what I have already kind of done ahead of time is I'll take this and I'll run this under the sink and just keep running cold water on it and let some of that dye drip off. Now, once I have gotten it so that it's kind of running clear with my water and not a lot of the color is still coming off, then I know that I'm ready to cut off my rubber bands and I'm ready for the next part. So I'm going to take a scissors and I'm going to start cutting some of these. I have it on my other screen if you want to see it over there. As I cut these apart, you can carefully take off these rubber bands and then you're welcome to reuse them. But I'm kind of just going for it and cutting so that you can see this pretty quickly. And with this one, I did a lot of these different colors. It kind of reminds me of the classic Lifesavers colors, like those greens and yellows and oranges and reds. So this is a stripe pattern similar to the first one that we did together today. And so you can see what the final product of that is going to look like. So I have about 3 or 4 more rubber bands that I'm cutting off. And when I've done this at summer camps and things before with kids, this is sometimes a part that I do. And then I hang them up on a big clothesline and let them dry for another day before I let the kids pack them up and take them home. Ooh. Look at that. How cute. So that was just our simple stripe pattern. We had really long stripes. We put all that color, and then we were able to come up with this really cool looking kids shirt. So this was a 3T. And then when you are going to get ready to wash them at the end, make sure you wash them in a cold wash. I also, after I leave them hanging outside, I sometimes throw them into my dryer for just about 15 minutes. And again, that heat from the dryer, if you don't have sunshine outside, can kind of help set the dye. And then you have this really cool, fun, striped tie-dye shirt that you can wear. When you are washing it, you probably want to wash it separate from other things just in case there's any more dye that's hanging out. I'm going to put this to the side and we're going to have some more fun reveals. So I have one that I did as a spiral, and this is going to be a baby onesie. So here we go. You can see that I did a spiral. You can see that I did a lime green, a dark blue, and a teal. So this is pretty similar to the one that we just did together where I used 3 different colors. So I'm going to try and take these rubber bands off of this. And this is going to be a onesie. And obviously any new parent to be is probably going to want to wash this in their own kids' detergent before they use it. But here we go. Oh yeah. So this spiral started down from the bottom, and then it has these really nice layers of color. So I started twisting the spiral from here instead of rather like a bullseye in the center. And then we ended up with this really sweet tie-dye onesie. That is so cute. All right, let's see what else we got. So I also had an old tote bag, and the tote bag was 100% cotton. So I was able to kind of add some colors. The tote bag had a couple of stains on it, so I was trying to hide some of the stains and kind of upcycle the bag in a way that I might be able to use it again. So here it is in some yellows and pinks and reds. And this is a bag that we actually do sell at Michael's. We have a lot of really cool tote bags, so you're always welcome to go and find those. Check out and try and find something that is cotton or has a lot of cotton percentage in it, because that's going to make for a better saturation of your color. I think it's harder with some of the other types of fabrics for the dye to do its job. But there are other dyes that are really good with other fabrics. So you just have to match the right dye to the right fabric. And I'm here cutting these rubber bands off so that you can see what this is going to be. Oh. Okay. Oh, nice. So here is kind of a fun tie-dye tote bag with some cool stripes that I did. And then you can tell on the bottom that I already had some stains on here. And so I was purposely going through with the red to kind of add some extra design to the bottom so that I can kind of hide those stains. I think even the shirt that I'm wearing at one point was stained too, and that's why I ended up tie-dyeing it, because now you don't know that I had a stain on my shirt because I have a beautiful tie-dye shirt instead. I have one more reveal for us. This is going to be another one that is going to be a long stripe pattern. So this is going to be another onesie. And so I have this light magenta color and this darker purple color. And I'm going to go through and I'm going to cut off all of these rubber bands and see how this stripe pattern on this onesie turned out. So if you have any questions, this is our last reveal. So now's the time to ask me. If you're throwing your tie-dye party and you need some advice, you need a couple of tips and tricks, let me know. Or if you have any pictures to share either in the chat now, or if you want to share them on Instagram later, I'd love to see what you're making. Here we go. This is the most fun part, I think, being able to see what they all look like. And again, if you are doing this in a big group, like a camp setting or a school setting or something like that with lots of people, Once you take them out of the Ziploc bag, like I just did now, then you still need a way to mark and know what shirt designs to what person. To make sure that you take the little tag and also write with a Sharpie on the tag somebody's initials or somebody's name. So here you go with this cutie striped onesie. Yes, please. Love that. Oh my gosh, that's so stinking cute. So this is a nice stripe pattern with our stripes going in a vertical. And I see some questions in the chat. So it's talking about, other than just experimenting, are there certain colors you do not want next to each other? And that's a great question. Thank you. I love this color too. I think it turned out really, really cute. So once you have rinsed this, once you've let it outside to dry, once you've thrown it into your dryer for a couple minutes, maybe even washed it once or twice and you don't love the color, or you think that it's a little bit more, little lighter, the tie-dye will always kind of set and have a little bit of a lighter tone than when it's bright and when it's wet. So when it dries, it will be a little bit lighter, but you can double dip. So yes, if you don't like what you have, you can go ahead and wrap it back up in whatever pattern and maybe add another color. And maybe that one other color is going to make all the difference and change the way your shirt looks. So the question in the chat also says, does Michael sell a selection of the powder dyes? Yes. So we have a lot of these different bottles that have the dye in the powder form already in it, but you can also buy dye in powdered form to begin with if you have your own bottles, or if you want to do it into big buckets or anything different like that, you can absolutely do that. And I also see a request to show the heart-shaped gray shirt again. Let me find where I put it. Here it is. So with this one, remember I used the Crayola marker to draw a heart. Ooh. And then I had folded it in half. I drew my heart. I scrunched it along those lines. And then I did a couple rings of color so that when I open it up, you can see that initial ring with that heart shape in the middle. And then it keeps building outward. And I left some of that blank space on purpose so that you could see some of the gray t-shirt. So I really like the way this turned out. This is on a gray t-shirt, that's why it's so dark. And I used a dark blue, or they sometimes even have a black in your kit as well. So a black and a teal, or a navy blue and a teal would work really well on this gray shirt. If they are out of white shirts, or if you just want a gray shirt instead of a white shirt, it's gonna work too. I think reds would look really nice on this. I don't know that yellows are gonna give you a very good time on this shirt, but you're always welcome to try. So thank you so much for joining me for this tie-dye party that we had together. If you want to keep the colors, there are other dyes. RIT Dye sells something called Color Fast that you can put it into that Color Fast that you can hold on to that color even better, so that if it goes through a couple more washes, it's not going to completely fade. And another question in the chat is asking about writing words on the shirt with tie-dye shirts. So kids are hilarious, and kids will just do what kids are going to do. So I have had small children do this before, where when you have the t-shirt down, they don't want to do rubber bands and they don't want to do cute little designs like I do. They just want to take the squirt bottles and they just want to squirt all over. And that is absolutely okay. And it actually ends up really cute. So there is not really a wrong way or a way that you can mess up tie-dye. So one method is scrunch up the t-shirt, let them put color wherever they want to put it, unscrunch the t-shirt, and you're going to have a really cool design. So I hope that you're able to use any of these tips and tricks to be able to have a really fun tie-dye party. And if you can't invite me, I guess you should at least share your pictures with me at Learn with Michaels. So Rashmi, thanks for hosting us. Is there anything else that anyone would like to ask before we go?
There was one question saying, could you keep reusing the bottles if you buy more powder?
Yes. And another tip with kids is that the reason why I would definitely use the little bottles instead of the big ones is because they love to squirt and they love to squeeze, and then they are going to use it up very quickly. So if you can catch them before they have used up the bottle completely, even if you have about half of the dye already used, You can add more water, and obviously what you're doing is diluting it. But for a kid's party, for a kid's shirt, it's okay if it's a little bit lighter yellow than this particular darker yellow. So it can kind of help you stretch out that product a little bit longer. So once you are outside, as soon as you have finished, you put all of them into the bags, leave them in the bags for probably a day if you can wait that long, and then take them out. And that's when you're really going to water all the extra dye out. Hang them up or throw them in the dryer, let them set, and then that's how I would give them back to everybody. So if you are doing it as a party, you might not be able to hand it back to them finished until the next day. If it's a sleepover or something, that could be a really fun surprise. Or if you're at a camp for multiple days, that's a fun surprise. But if you are doing this and you want them to go home with it that night, then they should go home with a Ziploc bag. And in the Ziploc bag or attached to the Ziploc bag, it would be nice if you had some little instructions to their parents to say something like, you know, rinse this with cold water and then go ahead and hang it outside before you wash it with anything else. So letting them go home with it that day, put it in a Ziploc bag and have them take it home. Or if you have time, let it sit for a couple hours, and then the next day you can come back and have another activity where you all kind of undo the tie-dye and kind of have your tie-dye reveal moments, which I think are really fun to do with a group of people too. So I think that's just about everything. Anything else?
I think we're good.
All right. Well, I have
Thank you
had
so
so
much
much
for
fun.
today.
Thank you for joining, and I hope to see you again real soon.
Bye.
Bye.